Just wanted to give a special thanks to our maintenance, custodial crew, and technology crews continuously coming in over the last several days during the snow days, clearing snow
Recording in progress.
multiple times for us over the last, so that way we could have school today. I just want to give a special thanks to all of them. It is a big lift, and there was one morning. I think last Friday is when we called school in the morning. Robert called me and said, "Hey, road conditions aren't there. I'm driving around now so I can learn my old hometown again and see where the danger spots are." And I got here at 5:30 and we already had maintenance and custodial folks here working on the parking lot. So very big thanks to them. Very big thanks for our technology department. They get to get a lot of work done when students aren't there. So they took advantage of these days to get some pieces done. So I want to start by recognizing some different groups. And I'll start with Dr. Simon and our new Warrior Radio. Warrior Radio is an internet radio station started by his intro to broadcast journalism students. It features music and talk programming produced by Smithville's by our students for the community. The station broadcasts a wide variety of music from 80s blues, R&B, rap, and alternative. And then the talk shows range from anything from music to sports. And I'm sure it is largely driven by our students' interest. This is a client-connected project, which ties greatly with our real-world learning initiative through Kaufman. Students sent out surveys to gather data about what listeners would want to hear on the station. The results of those surveys were analyzed, and that became the programming that they are using today. Students also learned all aspects of starting an internet radio station, including costs, equipment needs, and music licensing. The station does air 24/7, so you are always welcome to stream on Live 360. There's a link included in my memo that's in the board packet. Listeners can also access the Warrior Radio by downloading the Live 365 app on their phone, tablet, any place of those, including Google Play. And you can also listen to it on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire Stick, Chromecast, and of course the multitude of other streaming services. So right now I'd like to introduce Dr. Simon, and I believe he's brought two friends with him as well. And I'd love to give you guys just a chance to talk to us about what you're taking on here as the Warrior Radio Station.
All right, great. Thank you for the board's time. Thank you, Dr. Ma. Wanted to first, before we get into some of the specifics of how we started this really, I think, fun project, let me have a couple students from last semester's Intro to Broadcast Journalism class and introduce themselves.
I'm Brooklyn. I'm Morgan.
If you brought any siblings, family, would you please introduce them as well so we can
Or
recognize
if
them?
any of them have special days you want to recognize as well,
Oh,
Morgan.
So, my brother is actually all the way back there. Go ahead and say hi. And it's my amazing mom's birthday.
You bring your dad too?
Right there.
My dad and siblings are actually out in the hall.
Oh,
we'll bring them in. That way we can give them away.
Well, as Dr. Moss made mention at the start of this, this was a client-connected project and kind of I believe, to be the first of its kind in the district. And it's not only just involving our broadcasting area, but we're also opening it up to other areas of the school. We have equipment that allows us to be able to do podcasting. We got some slides up here that you can, you'll see here in just a second. The next slide just kind of gives a little introductory material. I know there's a little bit of a delay getting those done, but there's the class from last semester. All of them contributed in lots of different ways with playlists, ideas, show ideas. I was just so proud of them the way they jumped in and really took the project seriously. And maybe these two can talk a little bit about what they did for the project.
So we sent out a lot of surveys to faculty, and basically we were just asking them like what kind of songs they like to listen to, artists, if they like sports, if they want talk. So like we really get everybody's like what they want to do to make sure we get some listeners into it. So we made a lot of different playlists for different like times of the day. I was in charge of the 80s breakfast, which was really exciting.
I was in charge of the blues, which it was also pretty interesting. From there, we kind of just like made little liners. So for each show, we kind of had a different liner. Me and Morgan, I think we actually did. It was a holiday liner. Yeah.
Very cool.
Next slide, please. So she made mention to just a moment ago, over the Christmas holiday, we had a special holiday music marathon from 7 p.m. on Christmas Eve, and then all Christmas Day we had holiday music from Gene Autry to Taylor Swift to Dolly Parton, things like that. So kind of the impetus for this project was that there's really not a media outlet exclusive to Smithville. Some of our neighboring friends down Highway 92 have radio stations and things like that, but nothing that we feel really services specifically the Smithville community. So eventually, as we get rolling with this project, we'll have weather updates and local programming and things like that. That'll probably be shifted over to the broadcasting club that I'm also an advisor for. Next slide, please. But again, this was created through the Client Connect project through the Real World Learning Initiative. And as you made mention, we also kind of looked at the business side of it, how much it costs to put something like this together, the equipment that is needed for this. And I'll show you some slides later on of the equipment that we have for this. And then music licensing issues. You can't just start playing music over the internet without making sure that all the copyright stuff is taken care of. Our hosting service, Live 365, through our fee that we pay to host it, takes care of those licensing issues for us. But even though they're taken care of, they needed to know why those things need to be taken care of. So a little bit of the legal issues for that too. And one of the things that the students, and they already mentioned a little bit, we used the design thinking process to put this together. So part of that, the first stage of design thinking is called the empathy process. We have to figure out who in this case, our target market is. What do they want? What do they need? And so that's where the surveys that we passed out copies. One of the first questions we asked was, well, do you listen to internet radio? And a lot of people said, no, they don't. They listen to streaming services, or Apple Music or Spotify. So we knew from the outset, we're going to have to use our, kind of focus our marketing efforts a little bit differently, make it easier for people. So that's why we always talk about QR codes and download this app and everything like that. So as they made mention, we analyze the results. We'll also show you a program grid here in just a second. Go ahead and go to the next slide. And these two also have produced station liners, so you can hear the student voices on there. My voice isn't on there. No other faculty members are on there. You'll hear, hi, I'm Brooklyn. I'm a freshman at Smithville High School. You're listening to Warrior. So, while the students aren't live yet, it's just kind of a shuffle of music interspersed with their voices. You do get the sense that, hey, this is something that the students are putting together. So here's our sample program grid. This hasn't been rolled out yet. Once we get a sufficient level of songs and we start kind of having some kids from the broadcasting club start kind of putting in this. But you'll see that we've got some different shows for different times of the day, our weekend lineup, our evening lineup, and then throughout the day, it's just pretty much going to be a shuffle of different songs and stuff. But the broadcasting students are the ones who came up with all of these shows. So you see, like on Saturday afternoon, one of the students came up with the house cleaning show. The music to clean your house, right? Why not? You'll see on Tuesday night, study time radio. Well, that's going to be like instrumentals and stuff that you can study. And we had a couple metalheads, so we got Metalhead Monday, jazz in there. And then my contribution to the programming list was Saturday night college rock, so like old REM, old alternative, and then followed up by Bats and the Belfry. That's when you put on your black clothes, eyeliner. So I had to have my contribution in too, but everything else. What did what programs did you?
So I did 80s breakfast. So how I did that is I searched up on Spotify some 80s breakfast music, and I wrote all of it down and put it into a Google Doc. and I made sure to listen to it so it's all family friendly music.
I was in charge of the blues. I think that was the only one I did. Yeah. I kind of just had to go through and find music and of course make sure it was family friendly so we could broadcast it.
Yeah, and so her idea for the Sunday blues, that's the feeling we get when we know we have to go back to work the next day. So that's why we call it the Sunday blues. And in fact, right now, if you listen, or maybe perhaps as you're going home after the meeting tonight, if you listen to our station, you'll hear a playlist that Morgan put together. So there's about 3 hours of 80s music playing right now. Definitely feel free to log on to that. Next slide, please. So here's the facilities that we have in my classroom. We've got Studio Green and Studio Orange. Studio Green is where we'll have where we are doing podcasting and have the ability to do podcasts. And we have opened this up to other areas of the school to come in and do. Other teachers have expressed some interest to me about incorporating podcasts into their curriculum. I've had an ELA teacher, Miss Ott, come in and have her students record some podcasts and show them how to edit it, really easy to do. And then we have, as you saw on the programming grid, we have some spots allotted for podcasts. So once we get a sufficient level, really make sure that the quality is up there, then we'll start putting those into our lineup. And then Studio Orange is just another edit bay that students can use to edit audio and video. Next slide, please. So we got some good facilities for them. This is just kind of our vision of what the Smithville Media Network is now and hopefully will be. So, of course, Yearbook is in there. And then we've got Warrior News, our monthly newscast that my advanced journalism students take part in. And then we also have Warrior Wrap Up, which is like TikTok updates and things that are, we call it sort of our breaking news channel, since the newscasts are just monthly at this time. Then we've got Warrior Radio, Broadcasting Club, and then below that, we've got our streaming channel on YouTube for the Friday night football games. And then we also recently started broadcasting the home games over 88.9 FM. We bought this little transmitter. It goes out about 1.5 miles or so. It's mainly for our folks that like to tailgate the games, because sometimes it seems like they start tailgating and then they don't make it into the stadium. They just stay out there. So they can tune in on their car radios to 88.9 and listen to our simulcast of the stream that goes on. And then eventually we'll kind of pull all these elements together for SmithvilleMediaNetwork.com website. Next slide, please. So that's kind of our vision of what we've got for it. As Dr. Moss mentioned a second ago, here's some ways to listen to it. On the next slide, there'll be a QR code for you, but there's the link there to listen to it, or you can download the Live 365 app to your phone or tablet, listen that way. Or if you have like a Roku or Apple TV or a Fire Stick, you can download the Live 365 app through that and listen to it through your television if you want to. So lots of different ways to do it. This is a great service. And again, there's the QR code. I know I didn't do
That's great. So you seeking content advice? Fighter Fridays?
That's a good one. Just kidding.
Provide some balance for Taylor Swift Thursday. So
Taylor
Oh,
Swift
yeah.
Thursdays, oh boy,
Yeah,
yeah.
we got some hate on that one.
Oh. Can I?
Well, you give them Food Fridays and it'll wash out, right?
I like seeing how you guys are gonna integrate all together. That was one of my questions. So when you do podcast, a lot of people, video podcasts along with that and tying it into broadcast. That's awesome.
we have plenty of video we can set up again too.
And then maybe working with marketing as it gets further, selling ads. Maybe there's.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot that's possible with that. Show the viability of it. Yeah, we could definitely. We will not do any sponsorship. At least help pay for the streaming.
Yeah.
Cool.
Love it.
That's awesome.
Do you need anything else from any? What would be your?
Yeah. Yeah. love for you guys to come around, shake hands, and then stop up front in the middle. We're gonna take a picture.
This is awesome. Thanks for being here. Nice to have you.
Great job.
Well done, thank you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks for all you do. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, that's
Pardon me? You see?
We have another group here this evening, and that is our technology and innovation classes that occur in our elementary schools. During the Missouri School Board Association, which was held in Kansas City, we had students and staff from each of our elementary schools share projects they have worked on throughout their kindergarten through sixth grade years. Our students shared with conference participants examples of coding, building tiny homes, creating fashion pieces of houses, which is not my skill set. They were able to show a lot of different pieces, and I would say was a big hit. Anytime you can take students to talk to school board members, you're usually going to win. And they did a fantastic job representing us. I would like to introduce, we have Mrs. Amy Thompson from Eagle Heights, Mrs. Megan Germain from Horizon, and Mrs. Sarah Freeman from Maple, who are our instructors of our innovation and technology class. And I'd like them to introduce their students as well. And then students will allow you guys to introduce your parents. And then we're going to make you all walk through just like we just saw. Okay. But please, teachers, please share about the class and anything you'd like us to know.
Sure. I'm Sarah Freeman, and I'm the Tech and Innovation teacher at Maple.
I'm Megan Germain. I'm the Tech and Innovation teacher at Horizon.
And I'm Amy Thompson. I'm the Tech and Innovation teacher at Eagle.
Okay, so I just want to say we would like to take the opportunity tonight to talk about how our program really aligns to the district's portrait of a graduate vision. So I wanted to take a minute and talk about that. So we feel like in our classroom, we really work to develop well-rounded learners and innovative thinkers who are ready to tackle real-world challenges and solve problems. In order to do this, they develop their compassion as they use that design process to design for others. And they stretch their growth mindset. And lastly, these students are leaders who are given opportunities to effectively collaborate with others. We believe the skills developed and learned in our classroom puts our Smithville students at an advantage and prepares them for their future. We were very grateful to be able to showcase some of the work that we do with our students at the MSBA conference in November. And we were happy to see many of your faces there that came out and supported our students. And I think that was a great opportunity for them. So we'd like to bring up our students and we'll have them introduce themselves and talk about a little bit about the experience and the program.
While the students are coming up, I just want to share with the board that this class is not a typical class in an elementary school. Most encore programs consist of music, art, and PE. We are so lucky to have these instructors and their creativity and innovation, which is a great model for their kids. And whenever they present or talk about this program, they are the envy of every other elementary school that they present to. So we're just really fortunate. This was their brainchild. They came up with this and very amazing. Proud of you guys.
Okay, so I'll introduce my Maple kids. This is Miss Brindley Milne in 5th grade, and Josie Neff, 5th grade, and James Marshall down here in 4th grade. So
Would you guys introduce?
Brindley.
Yeah, would you guys?
I'm here with my mom, dad, and brother right there.
Run away, mom, dad, brother.
I'm Josie, and my mom is back there with me. I'm James Marshall, and my parents are back here in the corner.
All right, I'll take some time to introduce my students. I have Jaylee Hoverson, 6th grader, Jackson Hultgren, 5th grade, and then we have Otto Kaufman, our 2nd grader.
I'm Jackson. I'm here with my mom and dad back there. And yeah. I'm Otto Kaufman, and I'm here with my mom and dad right there. I'm Jaylee Hoverson, and I'm with my mom and my dad.
And I've got Judson Traub with me in 6th grade.
My name's Judson, and I'm here with my 2 brothers and my parents.
My favorite part about tech and innovation is getting to learn about all of the things that in technology and all the new things in the world, and getting to design different things. My favorite thing about going to the conference was seeing how everybody else could also come up with a bunch of different things from ours and meeting a bunch of new people. My favorite part about the Tech and Innovation Lab is learning about the things that otherwise you wouldn't have a chance to learn about, like robotics and stop motion, and being able to collaborate with the other people in my class. My favorite thing from the conference was just learning about AI and how it affects the real world. My favorite thing about the conference was that I was able to see what I might be able to do next when I go to the next grades. My favorite part about the conference was speaking to other people about what we do in innovation.
My favorite part about innovation is I like creating stuff, and I like my teacher.
Who's giving A?
I'm done.
I'm gonna go last, buddy.
Well, we didn't prepare a slideshow or anything else. So
Just a comment,
yeah.
being an engineer and having gone to engineering school, and that's the majority of people I hang out with, strong social skills are not usually attached to people who are involved in innovative and technology, speaking from experience. And I will say the most impressive thing that I took away wasn't the projects, it was the comfort that the kids had engaging with adults, answering questions. That was really, really impressive, because that is usually the trait that is most lacking in people interested in that. So I was really, really blown away by that. So.
Well, and speaking of this, like
Yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
lot of adults who would not do what you just did.
That's true.
So good job.
And I wanted to brag, they were next to a group of high school students who were doing robotics. And I think those kids were so interested in what you all were doing. Otto, your stop motion thing was awesome. I remember how great it was. Just to be able to highlight and show you guys off and what an amazing job you do. So great job.
Good job.
So would you guys, yeah, first, thank you guys for taking part of your day coming. Would you guys please come through, shake hands, and then we'll take a picture?
Nice to meet you. Nice job.
You can hear you.
You're one of my favorite teachers too.
Thanks for coming. Nice to have.
Well done, you nailed it.
Congratulations.
So much for
Sorry.
coming.
Yeah.
Good job. Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks for the loss.
Thank you. 20 bucks later.
Thanks for coming.
Great work, buddy.
Good job, Otto. Thank you. Thank you. Where's your student? Were you the one that had the suit on last time? I thought I. Hello.
Great job.
I can't. No, sorry. It's COVID exposure. I don't want to get anybody else.
Great job as always.
I know, I just.
Try here like.
I forgot how to do them, I didn't have to do it for so long.
Yeah, you guys are welcome to leave. You do not have to stay.
Yes, and that,
You guys need a water, anybody?
I'm okay, thank you.
Good. Need water?
Thank you guys so much for coming. I had a couple things I was going to share, but with school being canceled, we're having to move some things around with our superintendent's advisory council. I would like to brag on at each chamber luncheon, there is a group that sponsors the luncheon and then also shares about things that they're working on. This month, they Show Me Real Estate. Bless you. And one of the things they asked to highlight was some of the partnerships that are occurring within our community, not just with themselves, but just in general. And they asked Carol Noker to share about our real world learning experiences. Dr. Simon gave a great example, but she was able to highlight a variety of things that not only Show Me Real Estate is doing, but also other organizations are doing. And then also Mindy got to share the same thing about partnerships we have with local community businesses. And Show Me Real Estate did it as a way to just like, there's ways to get involved and don't get overwhelmed. Any little bit you do can help in your community. So it was nice to see them ask two of our folks to share their highlights. So with that, I would be happy to answer any questions. I think you guys saw what the highlight was, which was celebrating our students and our staff.
I love that we've added that in. Thank you.
Yeah, me too.
No questions for Dr. Moss. We'll move on to Dr. Crowderfield at 9.4, Assistant Superintendent for Academic Services.
Thank you. Just wanted to give an update on the board recognition dinner, which will be January 29th at 5 p.m. in the high school cafeteria. Working on the menu. Karen has heard from almost all of our guests of honor. So just a reminder that whomever you have nominated, we will create a certificate to present to them. If you would just be prepared to say a few words, not 20 minutes though, Mr. Jacoby, just a few minutes. Otherwise we'll never get to the student recognitions that will begin at 6:15.
I thought I would
So-
ask. Yeah.
We are collecting recognitions from our elementary, middle school, and high school staff currently. If you recall, we're going to do the presentation for the elementaries on that evening. So that'll begin at 6:15 and will end by about 8 o'clock. The middle school and the high school, we're going to go to them. So when they have an upcoming assembly, we'll get that date and time to you. And anyone who is available, we would love for you to be there to be able to participate in those presentations. But any questions about either of those events? Just wanted to give an update also on two things related to upcoming academic pieces. We are still working on the academic calendar. We have a couple of drafts that we're considering, and we're going to go back to the drawing board on one of those to see if we can make it a little more equitable for collaboration time for those who are not teaching in core areas specifically. but also to be able to provide our administrators with some time with their staff. So that is coming up on the 29th of January. We fully expect to have a calendar before you in February. And then the assistant principals, our HR department, Andrea, we all met the week before, I guess it was last week on one of our snow days via Zoom to begin planning for our Warriors Explorer 2024, which is our summer program. So we're very excited about that. We're going to introduce some new course options for our elementary age kiddos, and we are revamping completely the 7th and 8th grade program in hopes to inspire a few more to participate in that. So great things coming there, and there is actually an agenda item related to that, which we can get to later. And then the last thing I have to share, if you guys recall last year, I shared some big numbers with you for our VU scholarships. So just a reminder for those of you who are new to the board, we partner with a man here in Kansas City who has a pretty much like a scholarship engine. So we have asked permission from our junior and senior parents to provide just some basic information about our kiddos, including their GPA and their ACT scores. And from that, he throws it into his little program, and it will share colleges that guarantee scholarships for a specific GPA ACT combination. And then the kids are informed of who is interested in them. And the idea is that maybe there's somebody out there who would throw a lot of money at you that would make college so much more affordable that you've never even thought of. So we have 463 kids that we've provided their information. There are 10,368 offers for those 463 kids. Does anybody want to guess what the total amount is that's been offered to our kiddos? Ian, you were so good at this last year.
Oh, gosh. No.
I was so far under last year. I remember that.
432,000.
432,000? How about 435 million? So, and of
Did I
course,
say 1,000? I
you
meant
did. You could have been really close if you had said million. Yeah. So we submitted data right before break, and we will, our juniors are taking the ACT here at the high school on March 12th. So when we get those results, we'll regenerate so that it will be updated for our junior students that are included in this. But yeah.
How many offers in comparison for one kiddo? Like, if you had to quantify it, like for me, how many offers could I logistically get, like for that kid?
There are 50 plus universities that are included in this database. You could get an offer from every one of them.
That's awesome.
And I'm sure some of our kids do, especially those who are, have really high ACT scores and high GPAs.
Do we have meetings with junior, senior parents to really inform them of what all is out there? Because I know if you're, oldest is graduating, it's a lot to.
So what happens is our counselors will generate a letter for each student that shows them how to log on to the system so they can go in and see with their parents what their rewards are. There's also a parent side of this, so the parents can log in without the kiddos if they want to. And then the kids get a notification anytime, like if a new college comes on in a couple weeks and they're not on their original list, but they've offered them something, they'll get a notification that they need to go and check it again because they've got another offer. So they've really built up that part, especially the parent portal piece of it. So yeah, they'll be getting correspondence that shows them how to access all of that information from their counselors. And that's all I have, unless you have something for me.
Questions for Dr. Crabtree? Thank you very much. 9.5, Executive Director of Support Services.
All right, thanks, Mr. Blumker. Should be popping up here on our screen. There we go. Looks like it's working. Thank you, virtual Randy, who's behind the scenes, still trying to help with the board meeting tonight. So construction progress has slowed down, obviously because of the weather. The weather has put a damper on any progress, but I did still wanted to give you a little bit of an update and kind of show some pictures. And so all that soil surcharge has been removed. You've seen that, slowly taken off the site. So the pad is compacted, it's ready to go. And so they started staking out the different parking lot pad utilities and the rough in for that. And then they're preparing to pour the concrete for that parking lot pad. And you can kind of see some of the forms that they have for that concrete, for that rough in. And then of course we had kind of an abrupt stop here about a week and a half ago. So right now we're just waiting on the weather, waiting for that to improve. And once that starts swinging towards the warmer side and all the snow melts off, we'll be able to continue progress on that. In the meantime, we are continue planning for our high school gym renovation this summer, and also our middle school activity field, as well as the continued VAV work at Horizon in the middle school. So our engineers are looking at those spaces, looking to price that out and have those specs ready. So when they do have the bids for those companies, they'll be prepared and ready to do that this summer. So it's been a little bit since we had summer school at Horizon Middle School, do all the construction. Again, we won't again this summer due to that construction again, but hopefully this will be the last one, and then we'll be able to use that space for summer school moving forward after this year. So any questions that I can answer about our construction progress? Right, a little bit related to instruction, I wanted to keep you updated on what we're working on the middle school gym floor. So if you remember last year, we redid the high school gym floor, sanded it down, repainted, changed that center logo to what it currently is. And so during that time, we talked about when we got the chance, we we're going to look to do the same at the high school floor. If memory serves me correct, the high school was built in 1992, and that floor is original to that floor. That center logo on that floor was very similar to what was in the center logo of the high school before we redid that. And so I've had 4 different companies come out and give bids on those. And so they're coming in right now. So I hope to have a presentation for you next month's board meeting of what those bids look like and what my recommendation would be to get that done this summer. Just so you know, the design will look very, very similar to the high school. Our old floor was oil-based, so it had kind of that orange look. This high school floor is water-based, and so that's why it looks very like a white pine and very clear. And so the middle school would be the exact same way. It would be water-based. The difference is the logo would actually, in the center core, would actually be what's on Mr. Bloomker's jacket right there. It would be the very end of the spear instead of the S and the spear that you see at the high school. And then instead of saying Warriors kind of at the 1/4 court and 3/4 courts, it would say SMS. Besides that, it's going to look almost identical to the high school. So that's the design that that Coach Mosby and Coach Benica had come up with. And so, you know, they, of course, in their PE classes, they show it to the kids and hey, what do you think? And talk about those different things. And so kids gave the thumbs up on it, thought it looked really cool. And so we're excited for that. So wanted to keep you updated on that as well. So last piece of news I have is very good news. Last month, I talked a little bit about the data center. So Rocky Branch Creek, you might have seen, has closed the sale, and Google is the mystery client that bought that property. So that closed right before the new year, and Diode is the development company that they work with, says that they're looking to move pretty fast. So that is great news there. On the other side of the road with Meta, we talked a little bit about difficulties that they had with closing the construction bond. And so I did get great news. Michelle reached out to their education liaison, and she said that they did close that bond deal on December 22nd, but that's all she could share. So they're always pretty secretive over there on the other side of the highway. But it's good to see that they came to some sort of agreement, City and Meta. And so looks like the next building will be continuing. So good news on that front, and be happy to answer any other questions that you might have.
Questions for Mr. Hitchcock? Excellent. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda, 10.1, general financial review. Right back to you.
Great. So in our general financial review, you should see an update document that shows, you know, how we're trending. You'll have the complete document later on in the agenda, which shows our 3rd budget revision. But this document is there for your review every single month, and be happy to answer any questions you have.
Yeah, thanks for keeping track of that.
Yeah,
Sure.
it helps.
No problem.
All right, sounds like there's no questions on that. All right, kind of tied to that, 10.2, Finance Committee update.
Yeah, so we met today and we met last week. We've been working on comparable school districts to add to our comparison list. And then obviously we're working towards goal development. So far, our comparison list, where we've landed so far is Kearney and Platte County, obviously, our neighbors. And we've added Pleasant Hill, which is slightly smaller school district, but South Kansas City. And then we've added Festus on the St. Louis side. And additionally, Afton was the other one. Is that right? Afton is also on the St. Louis side. We have been pulling in data as far as their school performance, not just the demographics that we're comparing to, we're also comparing their performance on ACTs and so forth, so on. So it's been very productive conversation. Today we started talking about goal setting and the budget revision, and started laying out plans for like the next 3 to 5 years on goal setting, making sure that our budgets are more deliberate and focused on students and teachers. And so we have been, we have initial, I guess, thoughts put down that we're going to run by MSBA as far as are those goals attainable? Are they reasonable? And we think that we have a good parameter going forward and a good comparable set of school districts. So, any questions?
I just want to say thank you. There's a lot of hard work that's gone into that. And so thank you to the members of the committee who worked hard to do that. I really look forward to kind of that goal setting and, you know, as that comes forward to the board as a whole, kind of sitting down and talking through those in the next month or two.
Yeah, great. Probably any financial workshops coming right, they're going to be right around the corner. We know that within our CSIP plan, obviously our goal is to be top 8 and teacher pay and stuff like that. So we're going to have our initial budgetarily goal setting, but then we're going to have the general goal setting, you know, classroom size potentially, and others, you know, as far as teacher pay. One thing that we did vet out today is, and administration is going to take a look into this, is stripping out the grant data that's in our ASBR, because we rely a lot on historical financial information to project going forward. So we're going to work on a way to strip out the grant because a lot of times that's just one time, and it makes our data set noisy and unreliable. So we're going to work on that and flush that out, and we should have some good goal setting after that. So
Great. Thank you again. Any other questions for the? All right. Much appreciated. 10.3 MSBA policy GCPB, resignation of staff members for the third and final reading. Any questions on this? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve the policy as presented.
any conversation?
The one I'd like to highlight, and I know Ms. Davis talked about before, is the stay incentive and what that would potentially look like. And getting some feedback from our staff, it is hard to gauge the impact knowing that we've had sub concerns, and then are we encouraging people to be gone? Right, and I understand that it was received by staff. They did think it would be a nice incentive, but also it wasn't like kind of drawing the line. This is definitely something we would move forward with. So the other way I would look at it also is, as you think about people that make that stay incentive, there is half of our staff that don't necessarily get a sub. So that incentive is more of a kind of that first day that you would take off that would usually count against your ALB is not counting against that. So it's a benefit to you when you leave as far as that leave payout. So that is one piece I know that's been a big part of the conversation. I think Kim and I leg wrestled about it as well, going back and forth. And, you know, we say subs is a problem that then we're encouraging. So I guess what I would say is that if there are big concerns with that, we could certainly pause on that, do a more thorough conversation with our folks. I also do not see it being, as far as some sort of abuse or causing issues, I don't see that either. I don't think people would be taking more days off. And you know, Sean, I'm not going to put you on the spot, but I don't think it would encourage people to be gone. I think it would be something almost a reward at the end of their careers or during that pay.
Yeah, and I guess I've been pretty vocal about my opposition to the concept of creating another need for a substitute. I'm just surprised that we are at a flex non-work day is still the recommendation. I'm surprised the teachers wouldn't want just a one-day payday instead of just a flex day. You know, choosing a flex, I guess I was surprised that teachers would choose a flex non-work day over getting paid for at a substitute rate for that day. So,
And I mean, I think it, you know, this has been vetted out, and if at the end of next year, if it doesn't work, we can reevaluate, right? So even if we get in the middle of next year and we're like, this is crazy sub problems, you know, and we can tie it to this day, maybe, then we can look at it, but, you know, viewing it as let's try it. You can always
and I'm just
go a
one
different
vote.
direction.
Yeah, I'm just one vote, so it doesn't. Just my opinion.
I do want to say thank you because I know there are parts of this that some cleanup of stuff that has been problematic for my tenure on the board that should make it a little bit easier going forward. So thank you to everyone involved that helped kind of draft some of this out and get it vetted in a way that makes sense and easier to carry forward.
I agree.
Well, I guess I will make a motion to approve the policy as presented. Do I have a second?
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, please vote. Motion carries 6-1 with Mr. Jacoby in the negative. Next item on the agenda is 11-1, the FY24 third budget revision.
All right, thank you, Mr. Blumker. I am going to try to share my screen. And wanted to bring up some highlights of the third budget revision. Looks like
Okay, I can.
the wrong thing was shared. 1 second. There we go. All right, so our third budget revision is actually, I guess you consider it the first third budget revision we've had in many years, or you could say it's an insertion to our cycle. In the past, we could have our preliminary budget in June. We'd have our second budget revision in October. Then we'd have our final in June. So we would go October to June without anything in between as far as a full budget revision. And so in our cycle, we have added January is another time during the month that we will present a budget revision. And what that does is really fill that gap between October and June to give updated information to the board so you guys can ask questions, see what we have. And as we go into February, this also gives you a good point of reference because in February, we have our salary and benefits committee meeting or finance meeting that we used to have in May. And so this gives you that snapshot of the budget right before we go into those meetings. So I felt like that budget cycle would really fit with this third budget revision. So I wanted to let you know on page 9 of our budget, we've updated that budget cycle. As we continue to go through, there was a lot of data released from DESE. So a lot of these numbers are updated, like per pupil expenditures, just so you know, and some other items in there. So these are updated as well with these graphs. Something that was mentioned is some of the data in some of our tables. Those were text boxes before. And so maybe the alignment wasn't just quite right. And so now we have a feature where it's more of a spreadsheet type table within those documents. So hopefully that helps make those a little more readable because that was something that was mentioned last time during our budget. One of the big changes that we have is function 1151 at the high school. I can't remember if it was December or November, but Randy presented that we were awarded an ECF grant for Chromebooks in about the tune of 350,000. And so the expenses for that, because they were high school Chromebooks, is in that function 1151. So you will see that amount of increase from the second budget revision to the third budget revision in that piece. And so that was a grant. Mr. Jacoby mentioned that earlier in our finance committee, that we discussed that ways to look when we get grants, what that does to different functions and objects. And so all those are updated. Again, if you go down to page, bottom of page 20 and 24, again, we break out each function. You have the 1000 series functions, 2000, and then 9998. So it kind of gives you a breakdown of what those look like in each of those buckets. And so that totals those up as well. And then after that, of course, we have our object descriptions and then a little summary at the end of kind of what we're seeing and where we feel like we're sitting at as we go. Right now, we're $229,000 in the red. I say that with the assumption that all supply accounts, all those different accounts that are at the building level, textbooks, all those things will be spent to its furthest extent. You know, we allocate that on a per pupil expense. We leave that out there. We always talk to the principals every year. They do a great job coming March 1st, March 15th of making sure they have everything spent they need for the rest of the year. So we can kind of let the dust settle and really look to see where we project our numbers for this year going into the year after. So a lot of times in the past history, we've seen anywhere from $200,000 to $300,000 regained that wasn't spent in those budgets back there. So I don't want anybody to feel, you know, alerted by that number. If history repeats itself, you know, I feel like that'll come back some. So be happy to answer any questions that you guys might have.
On the negative 229,000, is that with your expenditures that have been budgeted? Is that with the expenditures being spent at 100%?
Yeah, that is correct. 100%.
So on the building accounts like 2541 or something like that, you're banking on 100% of that money.
That's the way we present it, because we do have that amount budgeted. So if the person in charge of that spent all that, that would be there. So I'll get a better view once middle March hits of where those accounts are in some areas where we might be able to pull back.
Okay. The other conversation we had in the finance committee meeting is going forward when the board receives a budget revision, that administration will bullet point out certain accounts that have had a significant adjustment to it. Because when you look at this, you won't be able to tell the difference between budget revision 2 and budget revision 3. You know, for instance, having 375,000 added to the high school budget, that this doesn't pop out on what we're presented. So they're going to make sure that in the future, items like that are being adjusted at a significant amount. They're going to bullet point out and have a write-up on each one of those.
Yeah, threshold limit.
We talked about 10%, but I'm not sure, you know, it's maybe
That's our starting point.
Yeah, we're gonna do 10%. Maybe we do a 10% and or a dollar.
Yeah, there was like, we talked about based on function codes, from budget revision to budget revision, function code that is adjusted 10% or more would trigger a bullet item for Robert to pull out just to notify us. Based on this budget revision, we felt like that if we had done that for this, we'd be talking about like 3 to 4 bullets. So, John, 10% still not an overwhelming amount of information for us to look at. So, we started there. We'll see where we end up.
Maybe we tweak it a little bit to say 10% and or $50,000.
Yeah.
If you're,
I kind of like that because some of the smaller accounts, right? You know,
right. You wouldn't know that student services
Right.
adjusted by 10% of 80,000 this time by just seeing what you saw in your packet. So
Trying to find a goal though that would encompass major movement in the budget is what we were trying to target. So
If you're interested as well, if you feel like the actual data from the 3 years past isn't as important as the data from the second budget revision or some combination, I can show 2 years past instead of 3 years past and show the budget revision before, if that would be easier.
yeah,
yeah,
it's not a bad idea.
That would make sense.
Yeah, just.
I can just do that.
Third furthest, yeah.
Yeah,
So
That'd probably be
just
good.
take out the 2020, 2021 data, and then I can still do the write-up in the summary at the end if it hit that threshold.
Yeah, that'd be
And
good.
have a difference.
Let's try that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Between the two.
Thanks, Rob.
Other questions on the budget revision? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve the FY24 third budget revision as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, please vote. Excellent. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you all very much. Next item on the agenda, 11.2 Durham School Services Transportation Contract.
Yeah, so last month we approved Durham School Services as our contractor for next fiscal year, which will start July 1, 2024. And so I have a contract presented to you that was worked on between Durham School Services and ourselves. I did want to let you know that that contract was fully vetted by our legal. And so we basically asked for some changes. Durham accommodated all those changes. And then the final version you see is the version that was approved by both Durham School Services and Smithville School District's legal counsel. So this is kind of finalizing the wrap up of us selecting Durham during that December board meeting and having a contract in place with them going forward.
I have a question just about Durham, not the contract. I think it's great. How big of a adjustment is that going to be changing? Is that going to be a lot of work or?
Sure. It will be some work to transition. The good news is we're kind of having a natural break.
Okay.
So currently DS Bus Lines is on the old Coulter property. And with the new building, Durham School Services will move right in. So we don't have to have one company vacate the building and then the other one come in. So that's a great natural breaking point with the construction of the transportation facility. After this contract is approved, if there's any tweaks you'd like me to do, I can bring that back to him. But if you do decide to approve tonight, we will set up a meeting between all the DS Bus employees and Durham to talk about transition and what that looks like.
Perfect.
So DS Bus Lines has been through this before. Durham's been this before, where they've both been in and out of contracts, and they basically release all their contracts. They want to help the school district move forward, and so they help that transition with the new company of those employees moving over.
Thank you.
So I anticipate the staffing for that to look almost identical to what it looks like now. The only difference would be is our contract manager, who's Alyssa Batliner, would have a different reporting manager than they do now because she'd be reporting to a Durham School Services exec.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions on the contract? If not, I'd entertain the motion to approve the contract as presented.
Second.
The motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, please vote. And that was Whitney and Stacia, I think.
Yes.
Perfect.
Sorry. Thank you.
Motion carries 7-0. Thank you all very much. 11.3 demographer report.
Right. So we're going to give this a shot. I have Bob Templeton here with Zonda Services, and so he is remote with us. So I'm going to give Bob the floor, and hopefully we have the audio set up the way we need it.
All right. Good evening. Bob Templeton here with Zonda Education. I will be sharing my screen. Hopefully you can now see my PowerPoint presentation. If you'll just give me a thumbs up, let me know that you can see and hear me okay. Awesome. I got to tell you, I was surprised. My first job out of college was with Durham Transportation. Quite the memory that involved. That was 1988. They hired me out of college. I became a manager in training, worked for Durham Transportation for 5 years in Texas. That's how I got my start. Hard to believe that I was involved in routing and planning new routes using software. That allowed me to learn software to do school planning for fast growth school districts. And so I've got some experience there with Durham Transportation. It was a great company, and I owe them a lot for getting me started in education. Okay, we were hired a couple of months ago to do a demographic study. We work with about 80 school districts across the country, mostly in central part of the United States, Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, makes up the bulk of the school districts that we work with. We have a process where we geocode your students so that we can understand your students per home ratio for single family, for the different housing types. We also interview the city and planning departments. We interview builders. We study the housing market very closely. We are a company, our large company is a company that specializes in single family research, and Zonda Education works specifically to help school districts with demographic studies and facility planning. I'm going to start with kind of big picture, talking about the economic conditions for the Kansas City region. And the unemployment rates, I would say, are very low. When you look back historically, going all the way back to the pandemic, you can see the big surge that the pandemic caused. It caused that unemployment rate to rise above 13% across the country. And you can see how it dramatically improved as we got back to opening businesses and got back to a little more normal activity. In the fall, the unemployment rate for the Kansas City region was right at 3.2%, which is below the national unemployment rate. We're still seeing, low unemployment numbers, which are both good news and bad news for the economy. It's still somewhat challenging to fill open positions because that unemployment rate is so low. We basically have about everybody working that really wants to be working. The last couple of years have also been known as the Great Resignation, because there was a tremendous amount of turnover in the labor force across the country as there was this huge adjustment for working remote, hybrid work conditions, primarily in professional services. We did experience it with our team and our company as well, as we saw folks moving to different locations to take advantage of the remote work. We are still seeing job growth in the Kansas City region. So despite the high inflation that is causing some cloudiness in the economy, it is definitely having an impact on the housing market. Locally, we are seeing some economic development along Highway 169. This is the industrial park area that's just west of 169, south of, I believe it's Highway 92. And that's Park Street that runs into this small industrial area where you're starting to see some pad sites developed. There's about 3 small sites and 2 larger sites that are still available for some commercial and industrial use. When you go a little further north on the 169 highway near the hospital district, across the street there, we've got the Smithville marketplace. It's also seeing some commercial expansion. And then when you go to Smithville proper, you've got some downtown renovation that's happening in that area as well. So there is some commercial retail growth happening in your school district, which is going to continue to cause some growth in the school district. Now, this is looking at total home sales within the district. You can see 2018 had the highest number of total home sales with 470 sales. We get this from deed transaction records. You can also see it kind of jumped up in 2020 with 465 total home sales. 21 dropped off a little bit. 22, we started to see the effects of the rising interest rates. The rising interest rates in the latter part of 2021, the 30-year fixed rate mortgage was around 3%. And in the spring of 22, that's when the Fed started raising the interest rates. They went from about 3 to 4% to now they're well over 6%, in that 6 to 7% range. Has definitely slowed down the housing market because the higher interest rates are having an impact on the younger buyers because of the challenge that it puts on the payments. Just to give you an example or a context, changing from a 3% interest rate to a 7% interest rate can raise that monthly payment anywhere from $400 to $600 a month. Now, we've seen these higher interest rates for a little over a year now, so they're starting to settle in. The other thing that we're seeing is this high interest rate is causing a shortage of supply of existing homes for sale, because many of the homeowners have those interest rates that they were able to get in those 21 year when they took advantage of the refinancing and the interest rates in that 3%. That's causing some hesitancy to to put homes on the market. So the new home market is still gaining some share of home sales because many times the builders are now offering some incentives to help get that interest rate down to that 5%, 5 to 6% range, which is very helpful for those buyers. Our national housing economist with Zonda believes that we'll start to see some softening in the interest rates in 2025, possibly late 24, but definitely 2025 is when we believe we'll see some softening in the interest rates. Now, your average new home price, you can see what it's done over the last several years. The average new home price, sale price in your district in 2023 was right at $543,000. The average sale price of an existing home has softened just a little bit in the last couple of years. It was $492 in 2022, and now it's about $391,000. Still relatively high prices, sale price for both new and existing homes. We work with the North Kansas City School District, just to give you some comparison. Their average new home price is a little lower than yours. It's in that $520 to $530 range. So your housing market, I would say, I would describe it more as a destination lifestyle housing. It tends to be either a second or third home purchase. Not as many new home or first time purchases of these type homes, which we will look at when we look at the enrollment and your yields. You are tending to yield a little higher in those upper elementary, middle school grades. That's why your elementary grades, the enrollment growth is a little softer there right now at kindergarten and first. I think it can be attributed to the prices of the houses that are being built right now in your school district. Now, this is kind of a big picture. Now, this is not to reflect all of the single family construction, but it's the primary areas where there is basically a subdivision. You can see we've got about 5 actively building subdivisions. These are the green shaded areas that we got information on. The yellow shaded areas are the futures that are in the planning stages that have either recently been approved for development and they just haven't really gotten developed yet. But the green areas are where we have active subdivisions building single family homes. We've got about 140 lots currently available to build on. There's roughly 20 finished vacant new homes available. I'll go over the details of these neighborhoods and have some examples to show you. We've got about 330 future lots that are in these yellow shaded areas. This is in the north part of the district, in the part of the Maple Elementary Attendance Zone, Grayhawk at the Lake. This is a satellite image from September of 23, 265 total lots, about 20 vacant developed lots, 9 homes under construction. There's about 235 occupied homes. The current yield of students per home is 0.34 students per home in Grayhawk at the Lake. Next, we're looking a little further south in the Maple Zone. This Diamond Creek is 30 lots with 25 vacant developed lots, about 5 homes under construction. They do have some finished vacant that are already listed for sale. The price point for the Diamond Creek homes is in the mid 500s, 549 to 580 is what are some of the prices that I've seen for the homes in Diamond Creek. Now we've got a future that is Second Creek Meadows. It's west of 169, also in the Maple Elementary Zone, 70 future lots. Originally, it was zoned to have some single family and multifamily. Right now, all we're seeing is the single family. The preliminary plat was approved just this a year ago in January. Next, we're looking at the Eagle Ridge development. It's a duplex community, so it's got some duplexes in there, 84 total units, 54 vacant developed lots. They do have some finished vacant in there as well. There are about 26 units that are occupied. That yield right now is relatively low. I do think that yield will go up a little bit as we get more homes occupied because these are so new, but it's right now very low at 0.02 students per home in this Eagle Ridge development. Couple of futures in the Eagle Heights zone. The 19950 North development is just 3 future lots, so very small, large property that was cut into smaller lots. Again, these lots will be sold directly to homeowners where they'll likely secure a custom builder. I suspect these will be higher price point homes. And then we've got Eagle Heights, which is 216 future lots. The preliminary plat was approved in June of 21. We're being told that the engineering plans are currently under review. So this likely could start to really take some action within the next 6 to 8 months. Looking further south in the district, this is kind of the southern edge of the district. We've got the estates at the ranch, 16 total lots, 7 vacant developed lots, 9 occupied homes. The current student yield is 0.625. That's about the average that we see from most of the neighborhoods that we work with and geocode students in. The yields tend to range on the low side for single family to 0.3, can get as high as 0.8. It mostly depends upon the price point of the homes. Location to elementary schools can also have an impact, and some of the amenities of the neighborhoods. The area to the south, which is Wood Lake Creek, again, just to the southern edge of your district, Wood Lake Creek is 160 total lots, 35 vacant developed lots, 20 homes under construction in here. They've got 5 finished vacant homes available for purchase. That yield is 0.338 in Woodland Creek. Now, this is the results of our geocode. So these are the students from this fall, and we geocoded those to their addresses. You can see the big clusters of students. There's basically about 12 clusters that make up a majority of these dots. We are recording about 54 students that reside outside the district's boundary. I suspect those are staff kids or the kids of employees that are coming into the district. Most of our clients do allow for staff transfers into the district. This is a relatively small number, represents only about 2% of your student enrollment. Now, I want to talk briefly at your enrollment history. So this table is the enrollment by grade for K through 12 enrollment for the last 5 years. You can see the gold line is the fall enrollment, where you had about 2,522 K through 12 students. The yellow cell is the largest grade per year. The green cell is the second largest grade per year. So you can see historically your largest grades are up in the high school grades. That tends to be what we see with districts that I describe as a destination district. Those are the smaller districts that are around the suburb communities, around the major metroplexes. They're a little smaller in enrollment, and families will tend to jump to those destination districts when their kids get into middle school and high school to take advantage of the smaller high school sizes, to take advantage of more opportunities for extracurricular commitments and activities. Now, when we look at the cohort grade level change, this is showing you by grade the change from the previous year. So to give you an example, this kindergarten cohort 1.018 is the change from this year's kindergarten class, comparing it to last year's kindergarten class. So the 169 to 172 gives you that, we'll just say almost a 2% growth at kindergarten. Now, first grade was a little bit below 1. Second grade was 4% this year, but I want to jump to your 7th grade cohort. The 7th grade cohort, oops, one too far, back up here. Your 7th grade cohort is consistently your highest cohort, excluding 9th grade. So of your K through 8th grade, 7th grade consistently grows the most. Now, we take that in consideration when we did the projections, and so we see that as a pattern and we build that into the projections. you can see historically your elementary has only grown about 1%. Your middle school grades have grown about 1.4%. Your high school grades have been basically 1%, which is really good. Majority of the high schools that we work with see a high school average in the 0.95 to 0.96 range. Some of that is early graduations. Some of it is some leaving the district in those upper high school grade levels. But because yours is 1, that is definitely a good sign that you've got a very strong high school program. And here's the look at the projections by grade level. So you'll notice that next year I'm still going slightly negative. Your enrollment next fall will likely be at about 2,500. That's primarily because of these large class sizes that are graduating compared to the smaller incoming kindergartners. Again, I'm bumping up this 7th grade cohort to match what we've seen historically. But based on the potential housing that we're seeing, the homes that are finished vacant, the homes that are under construction, we think that within 5 years, your enrollment could be at about 2,665 students. I also think because of your location in the Kansas City region, we're watching what's happening in the school district to the south of you because we work with the North Kansas City School District. We actually survey their new construction 2 times a year, in the fall and in the spring, so that we can provide a housing update of what's happening. And we know that eventually they're going to work through their land, and it's the Smithville School District is the next logical location for the growth to move further north as the greater Kansas City region continues to expand. So easily at about 66, 65 in roughly 5 years. For me, it's not a matter of if these numbers are going to happen, it's a matter of when are they going to happen. Should we see continued high interest rates? Certainly it could slow down the housing market, but also if we see the flip side of this, housing could accelerate if those interest rates drop down. When we see some of those large tracts of land that are primarily farmland, ag land now, at some point they'll likely sell, and those will then turn into developments just purely because of your location in the region. In 10 years, we think you could be at about 3,000 students. Now, here's what this forecast looks like at the campus level. Now, these numbers do include pre-K, just so that you would see what's being impacted at the campus level. That's why these numbers are a little different, is because we've added pre-K at the campus level. So you'll notice at your elementary schools, we do have growth that is happening in all 3 zones. If you go back to that housing map, there was some growth in the top zone, growth in the middle zone, and a growth in all 3. So we are seeing some growth, but like your elementary total could likely be approaching 1,500 students in about 4 to 5 years. So 1,500 elementary students, 4 to 5 years. At the middle school campus, you're going to be at 400 students in about 3 to 4 years. Your high school is going to be staying in that 800 range, and it's going to be getting to about 900 in about 7 years. I'll do key takeaways, then go back and be ready to answer any questions. Single family housing market is facing some headwinds with the higher interest rates and the overall cost of housing. The development activity is still taking place. We are seeing new lots, that should be lots, and construction taking place. The district has approximately 140 vacant developed lots to build on and more than 300 futures in the planning stages. Horizon Elementary School likely to approach capacity in about 7 to 8 years. Smithville Middle and Smithville High look to stay within capacity through the next 10 years. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation. Very timely. as you likely know, this district has historically made some decisions based on the demographer report on what to go do and growth. And frankly, last time we made some bets and those bets didn't come in. A little bit breaking news out of Davos today, but the CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald has some pretty troubling remarks on what the future of real estate holds. While largely commercial was what he was referencing, what are your thoughts on that potential trickle down effect, and how insulated are we as a district, or what should we be paying attention to as we start to make decisions based on the information that you presented to us this evening?
Wow, that's a great question about commercial real estate, but you're right. Commercial real estate is vulnerable and is taking a hit. It's, what's happening is the pandemic really accelerated some trends. It also made some trends more complicated. One of the trends that it accelerated was remote work. And as an example, our firm, prior to the pandemic, we had 40 offices across the country. We now have 10. So we've literally closed, 30 offices. We still have the same number of employees, but that's allowed for our team to move into some other areas to take advantage of different places to live. We actually had one employee move to Florida. We've got one that's in College Station, one that's been in South Carolina. And so this transitioning of remote work is what is really creating some commercial challenges. Now, I think what you're going to see is there's going to be more families that want to live in your district because they're going to take advantage of this flexible remote work. They may be working in Kansas City, but can live further out because they don't have to go into the office but maybe once or twice a week. So this is going to create these exurban areas around the major metropolitan areas that are going to benefit. Your challenge is right now the housing is pretty expensive. And so that's what's creating this a little bit of an anomaly where your growth is heaviest at 6th, 7th, 8th grades, right in there, to take advantage of your smaller high school sizes. I hope that was helpful with your question.
It was, thank you.
Could that, is there any way to distinguish whether, are they moving in 7th and 9th grade, or are they deciding to go from homeschool to public school during that time?
Wow, another great question. I've done a lot of research in homeschool because I do believe homeschool has seen the biggest surge from the pandemic. I've attended a couple of homeschool conferences just to be the fly on the wall and listen to the speakers. And I was blown away with what I've seen in that the homeschool growth is not just about an ideology. I thought the homeschool growth was an ideology from a Christian conservative perspective. There is that for sure. But when I interviewed these families at the homeschool conferences, the biggest group were the millennials that were doing it because of the flexibility. They wanted to be able to have a different school day from a time perspective. They wanted to be able to take trips because one of the parents had a flexible remote schedule so they could do some travel. This flexibility of the younger families is what is driving the homeschool growth. But I think when I interviewed the couples and found out, and I asked them how many of them were planning on doing it all the way through, their school experience, very few of them had planned beyond the next 3 to 4 years. They really were looking at it from an elementary perspective, not a K-12 perspective. So I think that's going to tie into these growth trends. But to get back to your question, I don't know that we can easily determine how many of the new students are coming from homeschool. That might be a question for your student information department. When new students enrolled or are enrolling, is there any kind of questionnaire that might reveal if they're new to the district because they moved, or are they returning because they were homeschooled?
Slash probably private school, I guess I should.
I think we have a few new warriors starting second semester than we did first semester. Do we have an idea on how many more we picked up?
I know at the high school there are 10, and that includes 2 homeschool kids who went homeschool last semester and are coming back this semester.
So there, when a student comes into our, at any grade level, the first thing you ask is where was their previous education, and then you reach out to that school, ask for records, all those pieces. That's the data we can put together for you.
So my follow-up question might be the hardest ball yet. So I'll just tee that up in advance. You've got a pretty substantial outlook here. Our state legislature is considering potentially an open enrollment type initiative. I've yet to talk to a district who thinks that they're going to lose and everyone thinks they're going to be a winner. But any advice on how to potentially quantify and plan for if that happened, what that might look like based on geographically folks who maybe want to come in for our great special needs services that we have here, or, you know, what have you?
Well, that is another great question that I'm seeing education really have to change in response. And from watching your board meeting, I've really enjoyed watching your board meeting. I love the media and the technology focus. I literally attend probably 70 to 80 school board meetings a year. So I get to see a lot of this. I think my advice for school districts is, and I'm not really aware of how much marketing you're currently doing or how much patting you have to pat yourself on the back. You have to tell your story. You've got to really we have school district clients that are investing tremendous amounts of money in marketing with billboards and campaigns and geofencing. Your communications department may be familiar with geofencing, but geofencing is a new strategy that school districts need to use. Geofencing is you set up a geofence around locations where parents are going to be waiting either at parks or sports fields or Target or Walmart at certain times of year, and you're flooding their social media with campaigns and marketing material about either kindergarten roundup, about open houses, about things to market, and it's through the use of geofencing. You may already be aware of that, but what I'm advising is you have to start really telling your story, because today's millennials and younger families do not have the same connection to the public schools that we had. When we moved to an area and started school, we just automatically went to the public school. That's what we did. Today, families will use their phones, search out reviews, and I don't like it, but they're using greatschools.com, and they're doing this tremendous amount of online research, and your web page and your marketing strategies really have to be strong to get your message out.
Well, to quote my favorite high school principal, we've got the best school district in the state of Missouri, bar none. So.
And that's great. And you gotta put it on a banner, and you gotta get it out there. Because unfortunately, it's the same thing in Texas. Our state legislatures and leadership are not supportive of public education like we hope they would be. And we're seeing the same thing in Texas. There's definitely a fight for advancing of choice, advancing of vouchers. So far, we've been able to kind of hold the line, but the Texas governor's already pledged something like $16 million to defeat Republicans that fought his voucher plan.
So you mentioned North Kansas City kind of does the real estate check twice a year. What's best practice, knowing that we've got some potential changes on the horizon from policy and economic perspectives?
Well, I like the twice a year, because in the spring is when a lot of times we see new housing really surge in the spring, because families are trying to time their moves to take place over the summer. So a spring update is pretty good. Now, the size of your district and what I'm seeing with your enrollment, a once a year look might be a really good practice. Once we get this stuff in our database, it's pretty easy for us to update it.
Sir, on the previous slide, you had capacity numbers per building. Where did you get those numbers? I was just curious, because looking at the capacity numbers, I'm curious you.
I'm sorry, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, you did pull up the slide. You on there you have some capacity numbers. For example, for the middle school, you said the capacity is 752. I was curious what those numbers represent and where you got that information.
We get those numbers from the district.
Okay, and does it represent the amount of students that the current building can hold?
I would leave that to the district to answer that question.
I can answer that question. When we built our 10-year master plan back in 2019, 2020, DLR did an assessment of all our facilities. And so they did base that off square footage. Now that is putting the maximum number of kids in a classroom, which is about 30 at capacity using every single space. And so those numbers are high because we're not going to have classrooms that have 30 kids, but that's the formula that DLR uses. And so they do show a true maximum. And so that's where they get that message.
So maybe we need our goal
I'll speak
capacity,
We had
right?
600
So that we know.
Building,
Yeah.
we had 6 trainers and still were overcrowded. We did not have trainers.
Yeah.
So, and that was with 600 kids, not 752. So I'm just curious, when you're building your demography information and you're saying the school numbers right now are accurate and can plan out for 10 years, I would be concerned with those capacity numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a really good point. What I advise our clients to do is the capacity is a function of programming and scheduling. It literally can change every year based on how the building is being used. So it's a function of review and schedule so that you can understand what I will call the optimal capacity or the functional capacity rather than a maximum capacity, because it does change every year.
I would say this is, having been in districts that did a demography report every year, this is very normal, the numbers that they would share. If you want to take every square inch, every piece, that's the number that usually goes up there. If we get to a point where we want to talk about optimal numbers, absolutely. But like he said, part of the problem is, you bring in PLTW, at different grade levels, that changes. All of our innovation learning classes are double classes, right? You start changing some of those things, that does impact that capacity number.
Great. Any questions for our guest? Additional questions for our guest? All right, this is an action item. Can I get a motion to approve the demographer report as presented?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, please vote. Thank you very much.
There is some discussion. I do think there's valid point from using maximum occupant loads to optimal from a planning perspective. I think we're being naive if we're not adding in targets that help us build out the logistics of what our future structures need to be. So I'm not ready to approve. I know there's a motion, but I would like to see some refinement to a column where we have maximum and optimal. To me, that makes sense. That's logical from a planning perspective.
I do have clients where we insert what I would call an optimal capacity and a max. That way you can see the how they play out over time.
So I would move to approve the demographer report with the condition we evaluate and add a column for what our optimal capacity for those 5 campus buildings would be.
So you're amending
my motion.
Let me do it. The second agree to the amendment?
Sure. Yes.
We've got a motion and a second to accept with the expectation to amend the report. Everyone understand what we're voting on?
So how, how are we coming up with those optimal numbers?
I think that's for administration and to work with staff and to kind of figure that out. I think there's variability to that I mean, to everyone's point, there's probably variability, as Dr. Moss mentioned, and what that looks like.
We expect
But
administration to work with the building leaders.
For me, it's just from a planning perspective, as
Yeah,
we
I agree
plan
with
five, it's, you gotta weigh both, cause you can't.
Yeah.
So let's back up. We put ourselves in a rough predicament because we used a certain set of data. It didn't come to fruition and we caused ourselves some shortfall operationally. I wanna make sure we avoid that entirely.
Well, to your point, like, you know, if you look out 10 years on this report, Horizon's at 650 in 10 years. Their capacity on this sheet's 656. But if their optimal capacity is 500, we got a problem.
And we've
5
all
years.
seen the negative impact of
Mhm.
extremely large classroom sizes.
Yeah.
And we're
So-
trying to improve on that.
Yeah, if we're gonna use this data, we have that point, because I mean, we might not be able to create a solution in 5 years for that problem that we know is gonna happen before. Absolutely. So that'd be good.
Yeah, DLR still has all the data in their database, so if you guys have classroom parameters that they can put in for that, then they can spit out new optimal numbers, and that can be reviewed by everyone and talked about the functionality of the building and come up with those numbers.
Good. With that, please vote. All right, the amended motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye
Thank
now.
On the agenda, 11.4, new courses, request for 2024-2025.
We have 3 new courses that we would like to add to the academic planning guide at the high school. All different content areas, all offering some market value asset opportunities for our kids. So you have that before you, and if you have any questions, I can answer or Mr. Moore can.
Any questions on this one? All right, then entertain a motion to approve the courses as presented.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. If there's no discussion, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Next item on the agenda, 2024 summer school dates.
Yeah, we'd like to request an adjustment to our summer school calendar. Last summer, the assistant principals who serve as the building principals for summer school, who are absolutely amazing, by the way, and are the backbone of the entire program. As far as planning and getting everything ready and taking care of day to day, they are amazing. Anyway, they had received some feedback from staff that, gosh, wouldn't it be nice to have a little bit more of a break in between Memorial Day and the start of summer school? And so I surveyed staff at the end of the summer, and that is in fact the way that it turned out. And so, it will decrease the number of hours where we see kids. We will increase the number of instructional minutes by 30 minutes each day to recoup some of that. So we still won't be going, longer than a typical school day. But we'll lose a few hours, but we also won't be paying staff for those hours. And we feel like it would be better for the mental health of our students and our staff especially to make this adjustment. And so if this is approved, you'll see that also reflected in next year's calendar for summer school. It will be a similar structure of 20 days with 7.5 hours of instruction each day.
Questions on this one? I'll just note, I know we survey a lot. Your voice matters, and thank you for the feedback, and it can help change things like this. So know you get a lot of surveys, but thank you for the feedback.
Yeah, I was just gonna say thanks for listening to the staff and making the changes, and it sounds like it's gonna work good for everybody.
There's no discussion. I entertain a motion to approve the summer school schedule.
So moved.
Second. We have a motion and a second. If there's no discussion, please vote. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very
Thank you.
much. Next on the agenda, expiration of tennis program.
Yeah, there was a question brought up about potentially looking at tennis as another activity. That is a common activity in the Suburban Conference, which we have been a part of for several years. If that's something that you would like us to explore, my request is that we charge Mr. Moore and working with Mr. Winterbore as well as Mr. Schaefer. This can be kind of his one of his last things that he takes on, and then Mr. Corcoran carry forward. Looking at, do we have students that have this interest and that want to play? It is a spring and fall sport. Fall for young ladies, spring for young men. One of the challenge is that will be for this, and I think I mentioned it in there, is to host an event, you really need 6 courts. Most Suburban Conference schools have 8 tennis courts. I believe Smithville has 2 that are not, that I don't believe we could practice on at this time. So one of the things we would have to search out is where that would occur. And the first places I think of are all schools. So then you look at partnering with that potentially school. We have swim in Platte County where our kids go over and swim. One of the challenges I can tell you with tennis is not all courts are lit. So that would be another consideration as we look at where we can practice for, and then we would be traveling for meets. We have examples where we have, we obviously never host a swim meet, even if it's hosted at another site. So that would be just my piece, is we throw it back to Mr. Moore and Mr. Schaefer and let them work with those students 7 through 11 and see what the interest is.
I like that. I know, sorry. I know at one point we had tennis courts as part of the facility master plan. Do we have and I know numbers have changed dramatically since we ballparked the price on that. Do we remember about what it was?
I don't remember what it was priced out here. I can tell you my experience in previous districts, what it was priced out at, 3 to 4 million. But that was back in 2015, 16. So
it's
That's with lights, probably lighting infrastructure.
I can't remember if lights were included in that price or not. I know they roughed it in. I think it roughed it in for lights, but didn't complete the lights at that time. And they were going to bring the lights in later for that price.
Right, at least double that.
I would like to see I would like to see us gauge the interest to evaluate whether we continue to have that in our master building plan. Because if the interest isn't there, then it's an easy thing for us not to. Relative to the swim program, it's nice to see that we provide that to our students and that is a significant cost to rent that facility, major cost to the school district. And so I don't know that, I would want to, walk this process pretty slowly so that we don't end up, over promising and under delivering. We end up to the point where it shows that the interest is there in tennis program, but the cost is going to be significant, such as the swim program was to rent a tennis facility. Yeah, it's going to be pretty big financial strain. We're not adding, a bunch of financial resources to cover that. So something to make that happen, somebody else we're going to take money for something else. So I think it's appropriate to evaluate it though, for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah, I thought your memo, spelled it out there. Let's look at it. Let's look at the cost, the interest and the availability and go from there.
So knowing that we are the only school in the Suburban Conference who doesn't have tennis currently, correct?
I do not know all.
I believe.
I think that's right. I believe that's right. I will tell you that I believe that we are the, and I'm making sure I say this, that we are the only one without a local place, either through a partnership with city, to practice or host. We would be the only.
Do a lot of the other school districts have it at their school, or do they go through? That would be something to look at. Or are they using other facilities?
I'm going to look for Mr. Moore. The majority I know of are at school, almost
Okay.
every single one of them. There are some, Northtown has a partnership. The park's right across the street from them. That's one I thought of is, they do have that public school, public district partnership.
So timeline, like if we do, could they gauge the interest and work out a potential practice spot offsite, by next year? Is that something that we could, if they're, I just know there's students that are very interested in it, so trying to advocate for them.
If the interest is there, sure. I don't believe the suburban conference would be set in their ways as far as once they get a schedule out, no more scheduling. They would be willing to provide us. There's always open dates that schools end up with many times in their tennis program, just based on the size of some of the schools and whether or not they have more than, you know, there will be schools in the suburban conference that will have 30 kids go out for tennis. There'll be others that have 4, and then therefore don't have even a varsity team. So then that team would certainly be willing to look for more matches in those different pieces that would have those. The opponent for that school with 4 would be looking for another opponent to fill their varsity matches.
And I'm trying to remember the swim program that took how many years? I mean, a lot of parent fundraising and effort and time.
I want to say it was 2-year effort, 3-year effort, right around there.
How long have we been a part of the suburban?
I think 2016,
That's all.
if I remember right.
7 years, 8 years.
I'm kind of in the same vein as Patrick. I think as we look holistically at all the elements of athletics and activities, that we start to understand our cost, impact, and value, and compare what we want to add versus what might have to be taken away, until, you know, the forecast of our budget operations drastically changes its picture. But, you know, in the next 5 years, that's probably not a likelihood based on our targets. So, I mean, it's just not saying it can't happen, but absolutely planning, due diligence, and cost analysis in terms of impact and beneficiality.
Thank you, Mr. Moore.
On hold.
All right.
He's got.
Next time on the agenda, 11.7, supplemental pay, A for January 2024. Mrs. Carlisle has a relative on this one, so we'll be abstaining from this vote. But I would entertain a motion to approve the supplemental pay.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no further discussion, please cast your vote. Excellent. Motion carries 6-0 with Mrs. Carlisle abstaining. Likewise on the next one, 11.8 supplemental pay B for January 2024. Mr. Saxon will be abstaining from this one. I would entertain a motion to approve supplemental pay B.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. If there's no discussion, please vote. Motion carries 6-0 with Mr. Saxton abstaining. 12.1. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
In a second?
Second.
That'll work.
You guys always like to motion for that one.
1.1 has become the most popular. What
Please vote.
was miscellaneous.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to be misleading.
That is
I'm gonna go to the
awesome.
restroom.
Yes.
Okay.
Please grab some cookies on the way up.
Grab some cookies.
And we'll, the board will be re-entering executive session in here in about 10 minutes.
Robert, I got a call. Okay. So we had some issues kind of at campus.